Pastor John, praying, Lord, I've failed as a father and a pastor. Forgive me. Grace Harper sits by the window in the parsonage living room, gazing outside with a wistful expression. Her father, Pastor John Harper, enters. Grace, my dear, what are you thinking about? Pastor John asks, his voice both commanding and gentle. Oh, nothing, Father. Just daydreaming, Grace replies, startled. You know, I only want what's best for you. The world is full of dangers and temptations. We must remain vigilant, Pastor John says, sitting beside her. I understand, Father, Grace responds, trying to mask her longing for freedom. Sarah Harper, Grace's mother, enters with a tray of tea. Tea, anyone? It's a lovely day outside. Perhaps we can all take a walk together later. That sounds wonderful, Sarah. What do you think, Grace? Pastor John asks. Grace forces a smile. Yes, that would be nice. They sip tea together, sharing a moment of peace. Pastor John takes Grace's hand. Grace, I know it's not always easy, but everything I do is out of love for you. The world can be a harsh place, and I want to protect you from its evils. I know, Father. I appreciate everything you do for me, Grace says softly. Sarah attempts to lighten the mood. Do you remember the story of how we met, John? It was such a beautiful autumn day. Yes, I do. It was at the church picnic. You were wearing that lovely yellow dress, Pastor John recalls with a smile. You laughed, saying it was too dramatic, Sarah adds, laughing. But it worked. I fell for you right then and there, Pastor John says warmly. Grace giggles. I never knew Father was such a romantic. The family shares a tender moment, but the weight of Grace's secret longing for freedom lingers. Grace lies in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her room is modestly decorated. She reaches under her pillow and pulls out a small, worn notebook. Flipping through the pages, she finds a pressed flower, a memento from Michael, her secret boyfriend. A smile crosses her face. Michael, Grace whispers. What are you doing here? Michael signals for her to come out. Gathering her courage, Grace quietly opens the window and slips out. Grace meets Michael under the old tree. He greets her with a warm embrace. I missed you, Michael says. Michael, you shouldn't be here. If my father finds out, Grace responds nervously. I had to see you, Grace. I couldn't wait any longer, Michael says, holding her close. They sit beneath the tree, the moonlight casting a gentle glow on their faces. We'll figure it out, Grace. I love you. That's all that matters, Michael says gently. I love you too, Michael. But what if we get caught? Grace asks, worried. Then we'll face it together. You're worth the risk, Michael reassures her. They share a tender kiss, unaware of a shadow lurking in the background. Pastor John, who has followed Grace, overhears their conversation. The next morning, Grace sneaks back into the house, hoping to avoid detection. Pastor John is already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a stern expression. Grace, we need to talk, Pastor John says, his voice heavy with disappointment. Father, I can explain, Grace begins nervously. No explanations, Grace. We will discuss this after breakfast, Pastor John interrupts. The family sits down to breakfast, the tension palpable. Sarah senses something is wrong but remains silent. So, what's everyone's plans for the day? Sarah asks, trying to ease the tension. Grace and I have some matters to discuss, Pastor John replies sternly. Grace avoids her father's gaze, her appetite gone. Sarah glances between them, worry etched on her face. John, perhaps we should all talk together. Sarah suggests gently. No, this is between Grace and me, Pastor John says firmly. After breakfast, Pastor John and Grace sit in the living room. Pastor John's stern demeanor is unyielding. Grace, I saw you last night. With that boy, Pastor John begins, his voice a mix of anger and disappointment. "Father, I'm sorry," Grace says quietly, her heart racing. "Sorry? Do you have any idea what this could mean for you? For our family?" Pastor John asks, his voice rising. "Michael loves me, Father. We love each other," Grace pleads. "Love? You're too young to understand love. This boy is leading you astray," Pastor John says angrily. "Father, please, try to understand." Grace sobs. "Grace, I only want to protect you. The world is dangerous. You're not ready for this," Pastor John says, softening slightly. "But I feel so trapped. I just want to live my life," Grace says, tears streaming down her face. "We'll discuss this further. But for now, you are to stay away from him. Do you understand?" Pastor John says sternly, "Yes, Father," Grace responds, defeated. As Grace retreats to her room, Pastor John remains in the living room, grappling with the realization that he may be losing control over his daughter's life. Grace sits by her window, staring out at the tree where she met Michael. Tears stream down her face as she contemplates the difficult choices ahead. Her father's love is suffocating, and she feels torn between duty and desire. The memory of her father's stern words lingers in her mind, and she clutches the small, worn notebook she's hidden beneath her pillow. Grace, whispering, "Michael," outside, where Michael stands, waiting. Grace hesitates, then quietly opens the window and slips out into the night.